I know that you guys like to know where we are in the book. So we are on page 418, and we're going to be talking about functions. This is also called evaluating polynomials, is what this weird word is. Don't get freaked out by this terminology at all. After you finish this test, we're going to move forward, and I'm going to teach you what the heck this is. So don't worry about the terminology yet. So, basically, in math, we call them function. So what they're going to look like is a letter F. There might also be a letter G, and there might also be a letter H. When we get back together in class and we get into more of this polynomial stuff, I'll explain the difference between the G and the H, but all of the steps are exactly the same. So whether there's an F, a G, or an H there, don't worry. But the principle behind this is we read this as f of x, or the function of x, equals, and then there's some equation that we have to solve, of course, because it's math and that's what we do. So your answers are going to be presented like this, with the letter F or the letter G or H, depending on what they started as. And then whatever the answer is. So we're going to do some problems so that you know this. So you're going to actually be given a value, and then what you're going to do is you're going to plug this value in and solve the equation. So that's where we're moving with this. So if you're on page 418, the top part of it, it shows you that there's an f of x, a g of x, and an h of x. And it depends on whether you have a polynomial, and it depends on how many terms are in the polynomial. Again, I'm saying words that you probably don't know yet, and it's okay, you don't need to know them yet. So we're more interested in making sure you know how to solve these problems. So, because I have an eraser and a dry erase marker and a dry erase board at home, we're going to do some of this so that this way we don't technically lose any class time whatsoever. And apparently I wrote this a little too long ago and my room is warm, so it's harder to erase this. So if you're still on page 418 with me, which I know you are because I haven't had you change anything yet, let's look at this equation. So this is how they're going to be written, and the f has a little slant to it. So f of x equals, is that showing up? Okay, good. Sorry, my book is not on top of me. So f of x equals 6x plus 4. So this is the equation. I'm at the very, very top of your book where it's just showing you, it's right underneath the really big number 2. So what it also will tell us is x equals 1. So it always tells us what the value is. So what we do now is we substitute the 1 for everywhere there is an x. That's kind of all that we do here. So we're going to write f. So since this is an x, we're going to replace this with the 1 equals 6 times 1 plus 4. I promised you this wouldn't be as scary as it is. So now we're going to solve this part. So f of 1 is now how we say this, equals, so 6 times 1 would be 6, plus 4 is 10, and that literally is our answer. That's how you solve this. I'm sorry, my book was kind of in the way. So if you were doing this on the test, this is what you are circling as your answer. Now, of course, sometimes these get a little bit trickier when you have more letters involved. That's when it turns into G of whatever, or G of X, or H of X, is when you have bigger equations going on. So My room is very warm, and I don't have my air conditioner on, so you could actually hear me. So you gotta wait till I scrub this board a little bit. But, oh well. Okay. So let's look at self-check number 4. This is still on page 418. And there is an A and there is a B. So this one's an h of x. And again, you'll notice the equation is just longer. That's okay. So negative x to the third, I really hope I could write this the whole way over, plus x minus 2x plus 3. Now, here we have x to the third. We can't combine that with anything because we don't have another x to the third. So we can't combine like terms on that one. Now we have a single x here and we have 2x here. So we could combine those terms if we would like. So let's do that first. That'll help us out in the long run. So we're going to leave the negative x to the third. So if we have negative 2x and we wanted to add an x to it, now remember, this is our bigger number compared to this, and it has a negative with it, so the sign is going to stay negative, because we're adding a positive and a negative. When you add a positive and a negative, the sign is going to be negative, so we could at least put a negative there, because we know that much. So, is this going to be negative 3x or negative x? I hope you're talking to each other. I hope you're talking to me. This is really bizarre doing this to nobody. But it's just going to be x plus 3. Okay, so now if you look at self-check number 4, we have an A and we have a B. So in letter A, it just says h of 0. That's how we read that, with the 0 in the parentheses is h of 0. So that means that we're going to plug 0 in everywhere that there is an x. Now here's the thing. If we take 0, so to the third power would be 0 times 0 times 0. So what would our answer be? I hope you're saying 0, because 0 times 0 is 0. So if we have 0 minus 0 plus 3, this one we can kind of do in our heads. H of 0 is going to equal 3, because it can't equal anything else. Alright, so now let's scare you a little bit more and add more negatives into this. And let's do letter B of this. I don't want you to be scared, because there's no reason. You're okay. Alright, so h of negative 3 equals negative x to the third minus x plus 3. This is how you write this out initially. So we keep this h of negative 3, and now we plug it in. So we're going to put this is going to get a little confusing. This negative is going to stay on the outside, and the negative 3 is going to go in parentheses, because we want to cube the negative 3 minus negative 3, which will actually turn into a plus. Anytime you're trying to subtract a negative, it kind of cancels out and turns into a plus sign. So that'll probably make you guys happy, because you hate negative signs. Not that I really blame you in the least. Okay, so anytime that we are going to take a number, and if it's a negative, anytime we're going to take a number and we're going to multiply it by itself 3 times, it's going to stay negative. Because you figure, when you multiply a negative times a negative, 2 numbers, it turns into a positive. Well, then you take that positive and you multiply it by another negative, so 3 numbers. Now we got a negative number. So anytime you take a negative number and you multiply it by another negative number, positive. When you take a negative number and multiply it by two other negative numbers, so 3 negatives total, your answer will still be negative. So, we need to do 3 times 3 times 3 in your calculator. So, 3 times 3 is 9. 9 times 3 is 27. So I hope your calculators are working with what I'm saying here. So h to the negative 3 equals, so now we can take this out of parentheses, but it's negative 27 plus 3 plus 3. Now, I left this in parentheses because, again, I wanted to make sure that this negative stays isolated. So, I was talking to some of you after class about parentheses and how they're used for different things. So, in a lot of cases, parentheses are used to isolate a number or something like that, especially when there's a negative with it. So this way you don't confuse it with what's going on around you. So that's exactly what's happening in this case. If I took the parentheses away, it gets a little confusing with what the heck's negative. So, we have a negative here. And we have a negative butted right up against a set of parentheses. So what does that mean that we do? Add, subtract, multiply, divide, distribute. What do we do? This is where you're answering me, hopefully. Because the answer is multiply. So when you multiply a negative by a negative, what sign do you get? When you multiply a negative by a negative, would it stay negative or would it turn positive? In this case, it turns positive. So one thing that a teacher taught me a long time ago was 2 wrongs, in this case in math, do make a right. So 2 negatives, when you multiply them, turn positive. So our next step is h negative 3. So h to the negative 3 equals positive 27 plus, and I'm going to combine these, 6. So now our very last step is going to be our answer. So h to the negative 3 equals 33. That's how you write your answer. This one, to be honest, is probably as gross, probably not as gross as it can get, but to jump right from f of 1 equals to this, yes, it's a very huge jump, but I know that this group probably looked at the very first problem that we did and are like, seriously, that's it? All I have to do is solve the equation? So that's why I wanted to up the ante a little bit. I'm looking for effort. That's what all of this is about. You're in this program and you're not going to get stuff right off the bat. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't just get so overwhelmed and quit and not try and not participate and rely on your other classmates to carry you through. So none of that. Because every single one of you in this room can do this. So our problem is f of x, or the function of x, equals 5x minus 3. And x, in this case, we're going to do f of 2. This is your value. So now we have to solve. So f of x equals 5x minus 3. So f of 2, we got to plug the 2 in where the x is. And I can almost, if I was there, I think I could feel you guys being over this already. So, when we have a number next to a set of parentheses, we multiply. So f of 2 equals 10 minus 3. I really hope you don't need calculators for this, but if you do, that's okay. You also have 10 fingers. Feel free to use those. 10 minus 3 equals 7. There's your answer. That's literally how easy these are. Don't let the number scare you. The steps are exactly the same. Let me show you how to multiply a number by a fraction, though, so at least this way you know how to do it by hand, rather than doing it on a calculator, because if you do it on a calculator, either sometimes you don't have the fraction ability on a calculator, or it turns it into a decimal. So let me just show you how to do that, and maybe take some of the sting out of the fractions. So f of 1/2 equals. So that means we would write the problem, f of 1/2, then you would have to do 6 times 1/2. Some of you might immediately be like, oh, I know 1/2 is 0.5, yay. Awesome, good for you. Some fractions are a little bit more difficult. So here's how you do this. Whatever your number is, take that, put it over 1, and multiply it by whatever your fraction is. So when you multiply fractions, you literally multiply the top straight across and you multiply the bottom straight across. So 6 times 1 is 6. 2 times 1 is 2. And now since this is an improper fraction, like our Barbie doll, because the top is too big, so 2 divided by 6 is 3. I don't have any room on this side anymore, so your answer is 3. That's how you multiply a fraction by a whole number. You put the whole number over 1, you multiply it by a fraction, and then you either reduce, so you might end up with another fraction, that's okay. If this was flipped, then the answer would be 1/2 plus 2. So now, I can I can finish the rest of this problem because I know the answer is 3. Or at least 6 times 1/2 is 3. So f of 1/2 equals 3 plus 2. So f function of 1/2 equals 5. So fractions, just because they're fractions, don't have to be scary. The decimals you probably won't be as afraid of because you'll be able to use your calculator with those. So I hope that this helped. Alright, see you guys later.